Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Today, we are thrilled to be talking to one of our favorite creatives, Reggie Bythewood, about his amazing series for Apple TV Plus, Swagger. We're going to kick things off by introducing you to the AAFCA members who are on the call today, starting with facilitator Katia Woods.
This is who's with us today. We have Reggie Pounder in Chicago. We have Al McGee in Florida. We have our friend Carolyn Hines in Toronto, Jill Monroe in Los Angeles, and Nancy in Baltimore. And I myself am in Philadelphia. Oh, she's in Los Angeles now. Nancy's in Los Angeles now. Sorry, my mistake. Take it away.
Basketball. Since I was a kid, I fell in love with this game. And when I'm gliding through the air, it's like pressing mute on everything else. Jace Carson has arrived. New season, new level.
Get your butt to school.
Late, Mom.
Given all of your options, you have to decide. Do you want to be good at the next level, or do you want to be great?
At Cedar Cove Prep, I expect you to be acutely mindful and acutely prepared. Not just on the hardwood, Mr. Carson. Understood?
Understood.
Jace has got too much riding on his senior year. We need to know he's with someone who will watch his back.
You did say if I ever needed anything.
Swagger prep on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Something horrible stopped because my best friend stepped up and did something about it.
Unfortunately, I don't think it'll be likely that things will work out for him.
All the work you've done, you were so close, and you put it all at risk.
I had to.
You could go to jail.
Jace, who else was with you that night?
Let's go, let's go.
He attacked a man with the help of 3 others.
Everyone is watching. Now is the time to stand with the kids. Our school's reputation is at stake.
I feel like I'm drowning. Don't let other people's opinion become my reality.
Come on.
The world ain't ready for what's about to happen. Not even close.
Look in my eyes, I feel like a god. I'm on the rise.
Hi, Reggie. First, I have a bone to pick with you. Is that
you coming out hot?
Yeah, you got a grown man over here crying, man. I want to tell you to stop it with that, but man, keep it going. But you do have a grown man over here crying. My question is about why is it was it important to you to go into the prison system? And can you speak to 2 things when you answer this question? One, about the number of African Americans in prison, and then 2, why you why you focus on the classroom stuff as opposed to the gritty stuff. I'd be interested in your thinking on your approach there.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you for your question, and thank you for your tears, all of it. Thank you. Hey, listen, I wasn't really that interested in the grit of it and the exploitation of the violence of it. What we do on Swagger is we reach for the humanity. And if you're touched by it, it's because we're really letting the world know, reminding all of us, number one, that these are kids and that they're human. Now, we're not a show about prison reform and youth detention reform, but in the context and the confines of our show, we can lean into some ideas, which is how do we make people that are incarcerated, making no excuses for what they did, maybe they deserve to be there, maybe they do not deserve to be there, but how can they come back into society? And so there are a lot of programs out there that are really looking to make people in detention centers go from not the next sort of penal institution and into colleges. And so I was really moved by that idea, and really moved by the idea that even if you were incarcerated, you still have a mind, you still have a soul, you still have a spirit. And really wanted to highlight that, really wanted to challenge our perspectives of whether or not someone who's incarcerated should be thrown away and dismissed and thought of as like people that do not deserve to still have a life. So that was a big part of it. Really the sort of like central question we raise in Swagger is, how do we treat kids in this country and in the world? How do we treat kids? Like, that is the foundation of our show. And so, look, as we all say, like, tomorrow's not promised, I don't know, maybe there's a season 3, maybe there's not, but we got this right here, right now. And so while we're here, we want to give you like an amazingly entertaining show, but we also want to challenge some perspectives. And particularly, we have so many of our youth incarcerated and no one's talking about it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Hey, how you doing, Reggie? I'm Al McGee with YETicket.com.
What's up, Al?
Episode 5, season 2. That one really pulled at me. And also, thank you for bringing Dr. Carlos in the show, because I haven't forgot about him, but I don't see a lot of anything about him in the news these days. And to me, he was very important at that time in 1968. I was a young man there in 1968 when that happened, because I was watching the Olympics. But how was the young actors impressed by him? And now that they know his history, much more his history, how were they impressed by that? And how was he impressed with the show?
Well, first off, let me say that, we first met Dr. John Carlos because one of the writers in my writer's room, a writer named Autumn Joy Jimerson, was one of his students years ago. And so when we were just really just talking about this concept of like, what does it mean to be a winner versus a champion? His name came up and she reached out to him and he visited our writer's room via Zoom. And, let me just tell you, like, when you're just like wondering, what is the relevance with sports and society, like he just gives it to you. And really his ability to just hold the mirror up to society and really talk about where we were in the 60s, but also like to understand that we're really in some cases not that far away. Some of the same issues persist, And so, so first of all, the first people that were starstruck were us, the writers, like we were just dialoguing with this brother and it was so in depth. And then just later on, I was just like, man, I got to find a way to have him in the show. And so we wrote him into 205 entitled Are We Free? And it worked seamlessly. I mean, number one, he's not an actor, but he played John Carlos. So that was easy. And there was something like really, there was something you could feel energy-wise by having this icon on set with us. And very, he has like a strong balance of like humility and that swagger, so it was really great. He loved everybody that was around him. We all loved him up. And it was also just really interesting, man, just like writing dialogue for him because he's Dr. John Carlos. He's going to say what he needs to say, So our dialogue for him was more of a roadmap, and it was just great. Every take was different. Every take, it was like something new came out of his mouth. You're like, okay, so the editor had a time, but it was beautiful, and it was just a gift.
I was really excited about that episode, but I'm excited about all episodes. Keep up the great work, Reggie, and keep up this show. It's really, really great to see. Thank you very much.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, Reggie. Carolyn Foster. Here's what happened in Carolyn Talks podcast. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. And we're focusing on episode 205, but what I want to talk about is what 205 encapsulates, but what also a thought that I had from the beginning of the season, which was, there's this song by Bob Marley where there's a verse. It says, "Release yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds." And that phrase from that song kept going through my head from watching episode 1 in the second season. And then it made me think about how basketball is a mental game, you know, like you have to be on it all the time, and like you have to be on your game, your tip-top game as a basketball player playing any sport. But then going into 205, this thought kept coming back into my head, because it's about where you are mentally, you know, like these young boys inside this juvenile detention center, they're physically in prison, they're always being constantly watched, but it's also about where they are mentally. Like, can they picture themselves having a life once they're out, you know? Like there's a boy with the little boy Nico, where he's just dancing in the rain, and I'm just like, it's all about where you are mentally. And then the name of the show is Swagger, and a lot of people think swagger is a verb. It's not. Swagger is an adverb, because it's about, for Black people, it's a mental state, you know. It's like you have swagger because of how you carry yourself and how you see yourself and how other people perceive you. So talk about how this particular episode, and then just the whole concept of the show, is about where these young Black people and the adults in their lives see themselves and how other people see them. Because I think the show is really about how Black people, or how young Black people, and how young Black boys have to learn to see who they are for themselves and not depend on society to tell them who they are and who they can be.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I think you speak so much also just like about really like the urgency of community, right? And just this idea that, you know, community at its best, we look out for each other. We look out for our kids. Like, it's not just, I'm looking out just for mine. And, you know, when like a community of people are targeting our kids and that we're under attack, even from like the literature that needs to be in schools and education, like take it out. Like what? We can't have Toni Morrison up in there, Lorraine Hansberry, James Baldwin. When you talk about like psychological slavery, there's a book that I read, like I think when I was just coming in college, called Chains and Images of Psychological Slavery by Dr. Naeem Akbar. You know, and so like it really does run deep and in so many different spaces and areas. And, you know, what's interesting for us, like we have to give you a show that's entertaining. Like we're not a documentary, not Eyes on the Prize, we're Swagger. Show's gotta be hot. The music's gotta be hot. And if you see the show and you're just like, damn, that music was hot, that ball playing was hot, and that's all you get, I'm at a point where it's like, okay, cool. That's good. But like your questioning and your radar and what you're really leaning into is I really hope that we all lean into as a community, which is like, how do we raise our kids up, young men and young women on all levels, from the literature, from the coaching. I've seen coaches. I've seen some great coaches, first of all. I've seen some great coaches that really care. I've seen some great educators that really, really care. And those people are heroes, and those are the people that really have swagger. But on the flip side, I've seen coaches yell at like 14-year-olds and curse their asses out like you wouldn't believe. That if somebody talked to them that way, there'd be a fight. And what about the mental health aspect of that kid that has to go home and then like kind of face that team and a coach again? And then there's like something that happens a lot of times on the team. It's like you don't really want to talk to your parents about these images because then you feel like, you know, you're not being strong. So it's such an interesting balance. And some of what we do is present solutions, but a lot of what we present in our narrative are questions as well, because they're not always up to us to answer. But I think if we're challenging perspectives in an entertaining way, we're doing our job.
No, I agree completely, because I think one of the aspects of the show that I think people should really pay attention is teaching adults to look at kids differently, you know, like because adults have their own preconceptions, you know, even for the Black adults, they went through the same things, but once they become adults, they're so caught up in their own ambitions and their goals, they forget to think these are Black kids, you know, these kids are still struggling. So I think the show really does pose its questions for adults to say, how am I looking at the Black kids in my life? You know, am I judging them the way that white society and white supremacy tells me to judge these kids. So thank you so much for giving the show that particular aspect, because I think it's especially very necessary in today's world.
Yeah, thank you. And just because of your line of questioning, I'm going to tell you like a quick, personal story. Hope I don't get in trouble with it, because one of it has to do with one of my kids, but one of my sons was my oldest son was playing basketball, was on a basketball team, and really doing a good job at wanted, but didn't really seem to have the coach's favor, So props to him. He told me that he reached out to his coach and he set up like this private session with the coach to just go over some of the things and how he's supposed to run the plays. I said, okay, cool. So I'll meet you there. He wasn't old enough at that age to be driving. All right. So I go to the school, to the gym to pick him up. And it's like maybe, I got there, it was an hour session. And I'm a little curious, so I get there a little bit early just so I can see the work they're putting in. And my kid is just kind of there, just kind of half-heartedly shooting around the ball, and the coach didn't show up. And by the way, my son did it all right. There's text messages confirming the dude just didn't show up. So now you got to kind of like deal with that aspect of it, and then like as adults, we are supposed to have a certain level of responsibility here, and to not even really like sort of be like, oh, I'm really sorry, or this happened, or just, yeah, let's look for another time. And my kid never did it again, and why would he? But on the flip side, I've had educators and folks that have coached my son that are the total opposite. But it's really scary how much influence these coaches have on our kids. And so you really just hope that they are doing it for the right reason and that they are putting the kids first.
Okay, and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Reggie.
I might get in trouble for it, but we'll see.
We hope not. Hi, Reggie. I'm Jill Monroe with RSVP with Jill Monroe on KBLA. So I want to talk about Jace and then his role in this episode, because I felt like he went on a journey. He saw parts of his life where he could have gone. We always see, what his future and his potential is, and we talk a great deal into that. But sort of having a full circle moment within an episode is unique and rare. Can you talk a little bit about how you wanted to, in this particular episode, showcase Jace and his duality almost in these particular circumstances?
Well, I think really so much of it is, in Jace coming into Are We Free, really feeling like he's just on blast, really feeling like in some ways people are looking at him as a criminal. And so just a really great juxtaposition to have him come into a youth detention center and to really feel like he's not that far away from everybody else. Let me just first, to answer your question, to give you like another, little story here is, when I was just really starting as a writer, one of the things that I would do is I would write stuff and take it to like homeless shelters, and we take it to the detention center. And one place in particular, I just remember taking it into this youth detention center. And, I was like maybe 21 or something, and we performed this play I wrote there. And we weren't supposed to interact with the incarcerated young men at all. I'm sorry, something off camera. And so, but we were just, like, we really had this acknowledgement, as I would say, that we were like the same. People made different choices, but they were not, and then you first coming in, you're like, okay, what's it going to be? You're a little bit on edge, but really just saw the humanity in them at that time, and really had been thinking, for several years about what to do with that. And then one of my writers in the writer's room, a woman named Raquel Baker, great young rising star. You'll be hearing about her a lot. Please track her career. But Raquel was incarcerated. And so It was really interesting hearing her talk and just this idea of like humanity and how we're all the same. So I really wanted Jace to come into this environment and all of the characters that come into this environment and just without making excuses for anybody's actions, just see them as human beings. And you know, I'm trying to say it in a way also where if you haven't seen it yet, it doesn't spoil anything. But I just think ultimately, you know, the main question here is again how we are treating kids in our society, how we're treating kids in our society that have mental illness, and you know, how, you know, are we really that far apart from some of the other people that are incarcerated for various reasons. So that's really what I was looking to lean into there.
Thank you.
You know, I'd also just say it was very interesting scouting locations. And I'm sorry, my dog is very active right now and wants to say hi, I guess, because he's banging things all over the place. But it's really interesting, like scouting locations, because when we were scouting, we went to this, I think it was a jail, not a prison, but we're in this jail. And the sister came in, she was taken off the bus, she's in her street clothes. She was shackled by her ankles, shackled by her hands. It kind of came shuffling in because she couldn't really walk and didn't really know what her story was, how she got there, but we were just all really moved and like touched by her. And that really became the inspiration for sort of character we call our man-child, where we don't know his story. We just see him enter the system and go from like a sort of, you know, normal citizen to a incarcerated person. And so that was so much of that inspiration as well. So there's like so many different entry points for us in Are We Free?
Hi, Reggie. Nancy Green with Film Critique.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi. So I was really interested in this episode's approach to the 13th Amendment and just kind of showing that with the kids, the similarities there and how this sort of system affects their future. At the beginning, you have that they've been accepted into these different schools, or this is where they're supposed to go to, and then you show how they can be derailed. So I wanted to know if you can talk a bit more about that and how the system might be, I would say maybe a little bit unfair in how it treats Black youth when it comes to the mistakes that they make.
Well, I mean, I just think, again, because we lean so much into community, and that's really like a big thing that we're promoting with this show is the urgency of community. So first thing is just like awareness, like just raising awareness, just raising the awareness that the number one provider for people with mental health are prisons and jails. Like, we need to know that. Are you fine with it? If you're fine with it, okay, fine. Are you not fine with it? Like, what do we do about it? So like the number one thing we really want to do is raise awareness to that. And, you know, I mean, certainly, definitely, not that we lean into it a lot, but certainly I share the opinion that the justice system has not been kind to us, been kind to our kids. And the hard part about that, the hard part about the show, the hard part about being a parent of two young Black men, our oldest now is 22 and our youngest is 19, is how do you raise children, your own children, how do we raise our community to understand that things are not going to be fair, are not always fair, but that you also don't want to raise them to be victims. You don't want to raise them to be victims. In a society that will often victimize us, it's like such a hard thing to wrestle with as a writer, you know, as a father. And all of you on this call, as Black men, as Black women, some as parents, aunts, whatever, like you all have experienced that. And so I am drawing a very specific parallel to Juneteenth in this, because we're saying that Juneteenth is a day that we're free, because all of a sudden now slavery is over. We're no longer enslaved on Juneteenth. So now that's our true point of liberation. Great, you know, but then how do we wrestle with the fact that so many of our youth are incarcerated right now? How do we wrestle with that? We're free. How do we celebrate Juneteenth now with the understanding that there are more people incarcerated than they were enslaved back before Juneteenth? So, you know, I'm an artist, I'm a father, I'm an exec producer, Swagger. Sometimes I have answers, but when I don't, I do have a lot of questions that I really, you know, want to bring forward to all of us.
Hi, Reggie, Katia here. One of the things that I've spoken to you a little bit about offline, and I want you to get into this a little bit. I feel like the show basketball is like the catalyst, but it's not a basketball show. It is the vehicle to tell these various different stories.
Yeah.
And I also love that you show the difference between, you know, O'Shea's character and, you know, the education point of it, and the coach and education, and how we as Black people are not a monolith. You know what I mean? You have here two very strong Black men that have different ideas how to help young people. And it's not necessarily one is right and one is wrong. It's just two different perspectives. And why is that important for you to show? Because again, I think too often in these types of shows, it's usually only the coach that is the strong character, the father role figure. We don't get to see the educator who also has the same type of intention, but just has a different vehicle. And can you go a little bit into that, why you wanted to add that character and that context to the show this season?
Okay, cool. So you said a lot, and I'm going to try to like track it correctly in my mind, because I do want to talk about the basketball part of it. And then I'll talk about how we're not a monolith. But something you said makes me also want to talk about Black journalists. So I'll say that for last. So first of all, yes, you know, you've heard me say it before, you know, part of our mantra is to get the audience at the edge of their seat, and while they're leaning forward, hit them with the truth. So because of that, the basketball is an important device. Like, because we have so much to say, and this is no disrespect to anybody else, I gotta be the best shot basketball on TV. Well, number one, Kevin Durant is an EP, as a producer on this also. I promised KD that the basketball was going to be on point. And so I love all the cinematic things that we've done, and that we've changed the game quite a bit. And, you know, we shoot much of our basketball sequences with a camera operator and rollerblades. You know, other people are doing it now, but it's just being real. Like, we've created that. And so I really love like how we can make the audience feel a part of their action. Now, I gotta have you feel a part of the action, because I also want you to be part of the characters and part of the story. And I love O'Shea Jackson Jr.'s character who plays Ike. I love him because he loves the kids. He really aspires to be what we call a 24-hour person. You know, and in the narrative, we talk about that quite a bit. A 24-hour person is not someone who says they believe in you and won't fight for you. You know, a 24-hour person is consistent, that you can count on them, you know, 24 hours a day. And so, but even within that, he's flawed. And all of our characters are flawed. And I love that, because it allows them to be human. So I love that we have, you know, some people are going to look at Orlando Jones' character and be like, I agree with what he's saying, but I don't know if I like him, you know? But the other great thing to be able to do in a series is to have characters evolve. And so sometimes somebody may start off here, and we really deal a lot with character arc and let them go somewhere else. So, but you also triggered something with your questioning. And, you know, when you do a show, you meet with a lot of people, you talk to a lot of interviewers. And, you know, I just want to tell you and thank you, but just like, even when we talk about the urgency of community, like the urgency of Black journalists, like the urgency for all of you to, not just for my projects, you know, but the urgency to really like reach for and look for the humanity of it and to celebrate that, because like we got to get those messages out to the people. And like I said, tomorrow's not promised. I don't come into this space like looking to get this amount of pickups or this renewal. I really look at it to like just have as much impact as possible. And the way that you all lift us up is critical and important and appreciated. And, you know, just as you see us, you know, just want you to know, particularly in this time, there's a strike, there's so many things going on, that we see you as well. So thank you. And I hope I answered some portion of your question.
Hi, Reggie. Reggie Ponder again. When I first saw this series, season 1, what struck me right away is I was like, these are some beautiful people. And they look good, by the way. The way you shoot them, they look good. It's really noticeable that you know how to shoot Black people. But these are some beautiful people, but I meant beautiful people inside. I know these people. The nuances that you have for all these folks is incredible to me. And so when we talk about this particular episode, 205, you have these nuances on these people and show how beautiful all of them are, from the woman guard who greets them to the ex-player who gets hugs from his friends. There's just all these little nuances to show that, well, I guess what you call community. Can you just speak to that? Because I feel these people.
Yeah, sure. Let me just make one quick clarification, you know, because I know as journalists, there's like so many things you have to cover. So, you know, my request is if the folks that I'd be joining on the call today, if they have not been able to keep up with the show, if they can just at least watch 205. So I just want you to know, I'm happy to talk about anything, but, you know, because I didn't know, you know, what level of viewing everyone has been able to have. I just felt like, all right, well, if they haven't seen anything, let's just watch 205. But please feel free to, you know, ask about anything that feels right to you. It's really just going to say one thing that I took as a compliment. I mean, I watched 205 yesterday with Gina and one of our sons. And when they get to that scene where they talk about, you know, this guard that you talked about, the person that greets them, you know, Gina turned to me and said, "Is that a real person? That's a real person, right?" Now I was like, no, it's actually as an actress, you know, but I really, you know, took that as a great compliment. So, you know, thank you for bringing that up as well. I just think that we go in looking to reveal human beings. And human beings that are sometimes flawed, but the ones that we, you know, lean into the most are ones that are just really trying to figure it out. I mean, do you have time for another quick story? When we finished season 1 of Swagger, you know, I was out of town shooting, and our youngest son was, you know, starting his you know, he was on his baseball season was starting, and he was a little dejected. And here again, I'm gonna get in trouble. Hopefully, he won't see this. You know, he wasn't in the lineup, but you know, like when the pandemic hit, my boy was putting in work. My son was going after it. He was putting in work, getting up 7 a.m, hitting, just doing so much. So I could not wait for the season to start. And he wasn't in the lineup. And I just was like, wow, like what's going on, you know? So then I couldn't wait to get back to LA, got to one of his games. And just to kind of get to it, you know, because people talk a lot about Tanner Carson, you know, but I really felt like my kid was that dude. So I said to the coach, hey man, listen, just give my kid a shot. Just like, give him a shot, you know? Coach said, okay. The kid gets in the lineup the next game, doesn't start, then comes in, like hits a triple. It's like, okay, great, got one at bat, but he showed up. Anyway, you cut to like the end of the season, he's in the lineup, he's playing his ass off, he's starting. And I really got the sense that like, I feel like my kid could be MVP of the team. Well, by the end of the season, he was MVP of the entire league. And I say that story for one reason, not to sort of say like, wow, look how great my kid is. I'm saying like how interesting this journey is, because as parents, sometimes you don't feel like you should say something to the coach. Then if you do, you hope you have the right approach. Like in that situation, if my kid is not playing, he's probably not a D1 athlete right now. And so like, kind of have to like, it's because it really struck me, a lot of people were really like upset at Jenna Carson. And some people really, but because she saw something in that maybe other people don't see. Now, like, what if this coach is an asshole? And I appreciate my coach that my son's coach who gave him another shot. What if he's just like, nah, and blew us off? Then what do? You know, so then there's always that dilemma of, well, is my kid as good as I think he is? Or is the you know, and it's so layered and so nuanced and so confusing at times to be a parent. There are books on parenting, but there's just no book I've read that's about parenting Cassius and Toussaint, my two sons. And so we kind of go on this journey. But I share that story with you because when you talk about it really comes down to community, and even as parents, it takes like other people outside of parents to help the kid get to where they need to go to become the men and women that they aspire to be. And so much of what we look to do is find a way to like push these young people forward and get out of the way at the same time. And it's such a hard thing to do. So it's one of the things that you will see us struggling with doing in our narrative.
Wow. Thank you so much, Reggie. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Hello, Reggie. This is Al McGee again here at yeticket.com. Now, there's a scene in 5, but again, I watched 1 and many questions, but here, there's a scene in 5 where the Black parents who seem to have money and their kids now going to this private school, it seems like they want to punish the young kids and get rid of them, just throw them away because of the mistake they made at the age of 14. But they don't seem to understand the sexual crimes that coach committed against that young lady. And I like that you showed a Black coach committed these sexual acts against these young people. Now, as these so-called bourgeois, rich Black people talk about eliminating them, how did you all come up with that idea? And then also Jenna Carson's attitude towards them, I really enjoyed that she stood up against them, that she wasn't afraid of them. How did you all come up with those ideas for that scene alone, but also, man, a Black coach sexually harassing young female athletes?
All right. Well, first of all, with that scene, she calls them the Jack and Jill wannabes. We had fun with that scene. You know, at sort of like what they call independent schools or private schools, there are quite often, groups that form that want to, protect the sort of smaller population at the school. So like in our case, like the Black students. And, I've encountered folks like that. And just because you have money doesn't mean that you have a bourgeois mindset. But some of them do, and there is this, we all can relate to this even outside of that space. Sometimes when somebody looks bad or does something that can not align with the school's mission, then you worry like how they're going to look at my kid. How they're going to see that. Some people will feel that just sort of in the real world, like us all, coming up, I came up in a time where, if there was a Black criminal on TV, there was like, Black man did this, Black woman did that, and then you always sort of understood that then like everybody's going to look at you in a certain way. So part of it was like really leaning to that. Like here are some really wealthy parents that are sending their kids to a wealthy institution, and children might not be athletes, but they're fluent, they want the best for their kids, and they're really worried about what the larger population is going to think of their kids because of what these other kids did. So that's really, the conflict that I really wanted to deal with. And Jenna, at the end of the day, Jenna wasn't having it because, her anchor is her love for her kid. And so we had fun with that scene, but, look, obviously something that just recently happened in the news, a big sports story, is that these coaches at Northwestern lost their jobs, right? So because of hazing, all right? So Northwestern, very astute, sort of elite institution, and not a winning record. Not a winning record. They're not champions. They're going to do something like that to the kids. And just think about the culture, like that the kids couldn't even tell their parents what they're going through. That's like, we got to like really kind of have safe spaces when kids can come to us. But they lose their jobs quickly because they have to respond quickly so that the institution doesn't look bad. But also, it's a harsh reality. It's easier to get rid of them because they're not winning. They don't have a winning program, right? Now, just check this. I'm like, it's aligned with your question about sexual abuse, right? But what if that same school is a poor school? It was a poor Black school, poor school of people of color, and they're winning. And that dude has like championships on his resume. I'm gonna tell you something. A lot of parents are gonna stand with that coach, despite that. And I'm telling you that because I know, because I've seen it, because we've researched it, because we've talked to people. Same thing with sexual abuse. I'm gonna tell you something else. Some of the parents that want their kids to be on the championship team are going to be pissed at the kid that outed the coach. Now, we didn't go through all of that, but I know that's what happens. I don't have to guess it. I don't have to fictionalize it. We just have to fictionalize our story. We have to protect ourselves legally. And the reason why I made it a Black coach is I didn't really want it to become a racial thing, quite frankly. I wasn't like trying to say, Black coaches do that, even though we have, a story of somebody doing that. But I really didn't want it to become like a racial thing. So it was like a white coach doing that, so Black, it was going to take on another thing. So I really didn't want that to become the focus. I really wanted the focus to be more, again, always going back on North Star. How do we treat our kids?
Yeah. In fact, the one example is at Penn State. The football coach, people loved him. They didn't want him to go. And you can see that there because that was a winning institution. Well, thank you very much for your answer and your time with us. And also tell your wife, Gina, I said hello. She gave me a great interview at the awards ceremony. And you guys do great work, and please keep it up. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi, Reggie, Carolyn again. So for my first question, I asked you about the mental state and the mentality of the characters and about always having to learn and them having to basically free themselves from the expectations that society has on them. I want to now talk about the constraints, because the interesting thing about episode 205, and it's a through line from the first episode in the season, is about playing by the rules. Again, basketball, as I said, is a game about about your mentality, about always being at the top of the game, but it's also a game about rules. You know, like you can foul someone, but it's about how you foul them. You know, like are you going to do it in a way that's not going to get you thrown off the court? And then in the scene, the scene that I really love with the debating scene with those two young actors that I think did such a phenomenal job in their scenes is about it. Like the teacher says, it's not about how passionate you are. It's about are you debating by the rules? You know, and that's such a heartbreaking thing, because like you're on the side of this young man, but he's not going to win the debate because he didn't do his resolve at the beginning. You know, he didn't do citations, and he's like, I'm giving myself as a citation. I'm talking about from my own experience, and he's like, you got to give a notable citation. And that's a thriller from the beginning of the season. It's about the whole concept of the show, where for these young boys to become like Division I players, to go into the NBA, they can have all this amazing talent, but they still got to play by the rules. They got to play by society's rules. You know, they got to play by the expectations that the adults have on them. They got to play by the expectations of the schools. You know, they got to play on but they have to abide by these arbitrary rules that they don't even know exist from the people sponsoring them. You know, the discussions the teachers are having and the parents are having, they're having all these discussions about constraints, and these young men have no clue what's going on behind the scenes. You know, so I want you to talk now about how in constructing this aspect of the show, because I think it's such a very important part of the show where we're talking about, especially as Black people, there's so many rules in society that we have to abide by, you know, and they're not written, but we just know that they exist. You know, like when we go in as Black people, we go into spaces, we are very cognizant that people look at us differently just because we are Black, and that's the rule. You know, so talk about that.
Well, you know, first of all, one of the things that one of the things I really looked at in that scene, I was really asking myself, you know, who is this instructor, right? And so I really love to actually, like, there's so many social issues that inspire much of the work I do, but I wanted to know, like, who is this instructor? And so, you know, I kicked it a lot with my co-writer, Raquel Baker, on this. And we envisioned him as someone who was volunteering, that maybe he's a debate instructor at some other, you know, sort of school or college. And he's coming in here to make a difference. And he's been there long enough to see people get out of the detention center only to come back, or to maybe not make it. So I was really thinking about this guy, and I thought, well, he really believes in Marcus, this brilliant young person who gave a brilliant debate, was brave enough to be vulnerable, passionate enough to be vulnerable, and also be very intellectual, very academic. But he's not going to let him slip. He's not going to give him a pass because society isn't going to give him a pass. So that's why he had to come hard and say, you can follow the rules. And that's where he was coming from, as a character standpoint, which really ultimately really does, you know, push our narrative more so. It's like, where's the character coming from? But it is an interesting thing because, yes, there are rules that we need to abide by or expected to abide by, but we also like love the people in our community who've broken the rules. And so it really comes down to, so let me just say, when I think of swagger and I think of that word, really think about it meaning a cause bigger than yourself. Having a cause bigger than yourself, right? So if you think about John Carlos, Tommy Smith, like if they were just about themselves, they're just about their paper, they get up on that podium, they stand straight, and they're good. They don't have all the sort of traumatic experiences that happened to them after the 1968 Olympics. They'd be good. They didn't have to take this on, you know, but it's because you have a cause bigger than yourself. They got up there and they broke the rules. So, you know, when we talk about the rules, I think it's really like, is it a just rule? Is it a rule that needs to be broken? And really maybe the foundation, the grounding of that should be the cause bigger than ourselves, the community that we deal with. And I'll just say this quickly because I've been like holding off, kept saying, I don't really want to get into this when all of you ask your questions. You know, you ask the question, you say episode 5 or episode this or episode that, because this is like so real for us. And thank you for giving a shout out to Gina, by the way, earlier. And, you know, it's like filmmaking isn't just something we do, it's something we believe in. And so I'm giving you so many long answers because I believe in where we're going with this. And so we say maze. We say maze 1, maze 202, maze 203, maze 204. We had a jar in the writer's room, and if somebody said episode, they have to put $1 in the jar. You know, so why do we say maze? Because we are really understanding that with our narrative and where we need to be right now with our culture is that we have to tap into. So our storytelling is not a straight line. It has twists, turns, obstacles, and opportunities. It's a maze. Our maze, our storytelling aligns with the civil rights movement. It aligns with Reconstruction. It aligns with our ancestors, and we stand on their shoulders, and we need others to stand on our shoulders. So we're in this maze. And so I wanted to give that to you as well, because when you talk about the rules and stuff, like so much of what it is for us is grounded in this maze that we are shaped. And in a maze, you can decide to stay stuck, be free, like, you know, but so much of this journey that we talk about is really grounded in that. And so there are several times that I encourage, you know, my sons to break the rules, you know, you know, and they could just be small or big. And because ultimately we always want to, you know, like one of the rules I would honestly break as a kid quite a bit was my mother. You know, shout out to every single mother out there, you know, my mother would work as a RN. She worked these double shifts. And then she would come home like around midnight. She'd get off at midnight, ride the train from 135th Street and get off on the number 2 train. And it would be like 1 a.m. Now, one of her rules is that my ass would be in bed because I had school. And I would break that rule every now and then because I wanted to make sure moms came home safe. So it really kind of comes down to when we think about rules and how we move through the world, is like there are rules that people impose on us. Sometimes they're well-intentioned. Sometimes we need to follow those rules. But really, ultimately, what we really need to do is like follow our heart and understand we have a cause bigger than ourselves, and let that be the rule, the North Star for us.
No, I appreciate you giving all these long answers. I love when guests
I can
give
go
long
quick. I
answers.
can do like sound bite, but I was like, well, it's just me. I don't know. I might just give you
No,
all.
we love when people give us long answers, give us a lot of introspective answers. And for me, my philosophy is there's some rules that are meant to be broken because some rules are meant to protect and some rules are meant to break, you know, or meant to break us. So like, you know, if it's meant to break us, break those rules. But thank you so much for sharing so much with us today.
Yeah, thank you. So our oldest son's name is Cassius Mandela Bythewood. some rule breaking in there. You know, our youngest son, his name is Toussaint Marcellus Bythewood. So like we named them after some rule breakers. So, you know, no pressure on them, but you know, they can go get it.
Hi, Reggie, Jill Monroe again. So you mentioned a bit about the revolutionary work you guys are doing camera-wise on court. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, in this episode, the juxtaposition of those basketball scenes and the choreography with the institutional backdrop. Can you talk to me about your thought process going in about what type of plays you wanted to show and how you wanted to highlight what was going on with the game? And again, against that backdrop, we think of sometimes when we see AAU games or lower games that are in smaller gyms, not necessarily all the time more expensive ones. And we use that analogy, but here they really were in that. So can you talk about the choices you made and how that choreography all came together?
Sure. So, you know, a lot of times when we do our basketball, it's like, and we decide on the choreography, it's first generated by the script, and then the story sort of tells us, okay, this is how we're going to shoot it. This started off a little differently this way because I wanted to do something that we have never seen done before. Never seen in the history of cinema a like full basketball game in one shot. It's never been, if it's been done, I haven't seen it, you know? So we had no reference for ever seeing anything like that. And you know, we talked a bit about this movie 1917, which the whole movie is shot as if it's all one shot. They very cleverly hide the edits, but really brilliant in the way that they do it. So you feel like you're watching this film that never cuts. So I started talking to my team about it. I started talking to, you know, my DP, Cliff Charles, about it. And we talked about like, what if we do this as one shot, as if we make it look like it's one shot. And I just started to rally, you know, my producer, Monique Floyd, I got her on my side. Like I had a campaign and get everybody on board. But even in doing that, I felt like I needed to tell them in a way that they could hear it, because quickly I was like, I don't want to hide the cuts. I want to do it as all. I want to create history here. And there's a part of it that's just like, I don't know, I'd say like hopefully healthy ego. Like, let's just do something that nobody's ever done. Like, let's just go get something that nobody has even attempted to do as far as we know. So then it's like so then I got to the point where like, well, then how does that make sense for the story? And like, where does that make sense? So if you think about this idea that there were no cuts, there were no edits, it's just fluid and free. It's like, let's put that in, Are We Free? Now it's going to really make sense. And let's go one step further, which is perfect and all kind of aligned, is that they don't have we had an option to shoot it in an interior gymnasium, but then they had this outdoor court. And I just really love the juxtaposition of like the fencing, but outdoor. So this is our only outdoor game, you know, in the season. And so I love that the basketball game gave us the most sense of freedom in any maze that we did, particularly the maze where, you know, everyone was incarcerated.
Amazing. Thank you for that answer.
Hi, Nancy again.
Hey.
Hi. So I think I have a two-part question. So I was really fascinated by the scene with Jace's mother, Jenna, and the parents and everything, like how they treated her. I actually auditioned for the show and I auditioned for that. So I was really fascinated by how it would turn out. And it was fabulous. And so I wanted to know if you could talk a bit more, aside from the writing, which you just talked about, the bringing together of that whole scene, and also the juxtaposition with how Jace is able to bring together all of his teammates and the other team and kind of, you know, bring everybody's anger down, whereas his mother kind of has the opposite experience there. Can you talk about that as well?
Okay, now I want to like see if I ever saw you audition. I'm just so curious. So So that seems actually interesting for a couple of reasons. Number one, it was written as this backyard patio scene. And we had been shooting in that location, and we were scrambling and ran out of time. And it was almost like, I don't know, like almost had about 2 hours to do this scene. And for me, like, there were, people close to me know this. Like the scenes that scare me the most are not the scenes with hundreds of people. I love those scenes. The basketball scenes, I love it. You give me a scene where there's a bunch of people sitting around the table, I'm like, oh God, like it's just like the hardest thing in the world to me, And so from a cinematic standpoint, now I really became heightened because instead of them being all laid out and the patio, which would have probably been like a whole bunch of angles, but I felt very comfortable with that. I had to put everybody around this table and keep it confined. And it sort of became, realized later, like a really good thing, because again, it being confined and not having a lot of freedom, even in their space, actually made more sense for the narrative. So that was a good thing. And, but also just really wanting somebody to just tell those people about themselves. Those people who were, from their point of view, not villains, and I really like to write and direct in that way. So, so that's a little bit about how that came together. I'm forgetting the other part of your question.
How Jace's mother was like, she's, yeah. And
right. And so, and like how Jace was able to like pull his team together. I mean, I feel like Jenna just has no patience for them. Maybe I don't have a lot of patience for folks like that. And there was opportunity to throw them a little something, And so every now and then I love to use my characters in that way. But so much of it also is about helping Jace understand what it means to be a champion. There's a lot of winners out there. We're raising him up on this show, raising him up on Swagger. Like, how do we take this, person who was like a kid in season 1 who just wanted to make a name for himself? Like, how do we raise him up right now to be a champion? And so I think that we're just seeing him take steps in that direction. And that's, really where I was looking to push him in this narrative.
Nice. Thank you. I can see that. And it was a great episode. It was really enjoyable to watch. And I definitely love the basketball outside with the fencing. That was great.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Reggie, Kathy again. Especially living like in Philadelphia, there's a lot of stuff going on in our city, and we just had another tragic loss of a young man. We talk always about like the kids and why they deserve to be incarcerated, and make it seem like not us as a community, but people outside of a community, why they just think it's bad parenting. It's not, not having good moral values. What we don't talk enough about, that it is several steps that contribute to that. And I think society is very comfortable saying, well, here are 2 kids from the same neighborhood, and the one kid made it. What's wrong with the other kid? And I think Jace is a good example, because, you have in Jenna somebody who is very hands-on and maybe sometimes overprotective, and wanting to make sure that her son doesn't go that route. And many Black parents don't have that fortitude, freedom, because they have to work. And they would traditionally work jobs where you can't be like, hey, I got to leave 2 hours to go to parent teacher. I got to leave 2 hours to be able to go to the game. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think subtly you are saying that. And again, the incarceration is the end result, but things started going south way before that. You know what I mean? We look about programs that have been taken away, things that you and I had as kids, recreational youth, being able to go to a rec center. Here in Philadelphia, you have a shortage of swimming pools, and then people get mad if a kid jumps into a swimming pool, but it's 10,000 degrees. All these things that used to be here for kids, music education, the list goes on and on. But we focus solely on these being bad individuals, being raised by bad people, making bad choices, but we're not taking responsibility about all the things that contributed to the end result. And again, I think Jenna understands that, but not everybody can be a Jenna. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, okay. Man, you just be giving me a lot. I'm gonna just, like, since you ended with Jenna, like, let me just like lean into it, because so much of it just comes from also like parenting, right? And so, again, another thing that happened right around the time we're in the writer's room, I shared with the writers, like when our youngest son, Toussaint, who was 18, he was driving from a baseball game that was out in Compton, and he got pulled over by a cop. Now, he told me the story. He told me what happened, and as a parent, as a Black father parent, my feeling was like, thank God. Because now I know my dude knows how to, like, it's a unfortunate rite of passage, right? Like, okay, I'm like, when it happens, how you gonna handle it? Did everything I tell you come together? But that's a reality, right? Like, we live in a space where you gotta wait for your kid to get pulled over. And so, like, the Jenna Carson aspect of it is so nuanced and interesting, because my take of it, and as an artist, I don't want to tell people what to think. I just put it out there, and then people are going to get what they're going to get, But my take of it, if Jace Carson wanted to be a violinist or a writer, like, oh my God, when I wrote something, tell me my mother didn't call every damn person in the world to make sure that that theater was filled up. Like, yeah, you got to find that balance. Like, we got to fight for our kids. There's no joke out here. But it's an interesting juxtaposition, because as a father that I am, I want to know that my kids can protect themselves. Now, Gina's their mother, so she's always going to have a different level of protectiveness, But I would love a world where I don't have to feel the way I do about my children. But damn, every now and then, I'm like, damn, I haven't really checked in with Cash. I haven't checked in with your son. I haven't reminded him again. Next time you get pulled over, when somebody comes at you and it's aggressive, and it's like, my kid playing baseball, he's travels in different teams, and he's 19 now, and he goes away and he's playing in the South in various environments, and had a recent encounter. It's like, how do you handle, how do you walk this world? How do you walk through this country in a racist society and not become a victim? I always have the answers to that. I just gotta make sure that my dude's aware, And then we have to really look to each other. Like what y'all do is, John, I don't know what you're gonna write about with Swagger, but my request, if you wrote anything, is something that challenges people's perspective out there, Because this is another little aside. Yesterday, I was with Gina and producer Emoni Floyd. We were, out there walking, and during the, where people were picketing SAG and WGA, and I said what's up to somebody, and he said, "Hey, what's up?" He didn't even know. It was Lawrence Hilton Jacobs. Now, Lawrence Hilton Jacobs, I don't know like how his career is going, but that dude, he was on Welcome Back, Kotter. He played Freddie Boom Boom Washington, and I remember like wanting to dress like him. I wanted to act like him, and he's gone on and done some real interesting work. But I just think about like the power of what we have as writers, like including, journals, like the power of what we have, like the impact that we all have at work. Like I saw that dude and it brought me back to childhood. I didn't even say anything, just kept it moving. I didn't mention anything to Monique or Gina. It was just like, boom, like a quick little flashback of like Freddie Boom Boom Washington, but it also just really like speaks to, like, how do I use my craft? How do I use this show to make the world better? How do I use the show to entertain the hell out of people, but to make sure that we're left in a better space? And I say it's a lot because, you push a lot of buttons with your questions, and I wish I had all the answers, but I'm a big researcher in the work that I do. I feel like a lot of the research comes through in Swagger. I just use How We Treat Kids as a North Star. And I just really hope that just throughout our storytelling, throughout feeling the urgency of community, we all come together and get it right.
I have been tasked the honor of saying thank you on behalf of the largest group of Black film and TV critics. We thank you for joining us today for this special edition of AAFCA Roundtable. And as always, know that we are here for you to amplify your voice, not just yours, but your lovely wife's, Gina. We see your work. I know it's tough out here in these creative art streets. It's like the Hunger Games. But know that, especially shows about centering young Black people and using that architect of a voice to tell a different story, I think is very important in these times. And we hope that everything comes to a quick, good resolution, that you guys get the deal that you deserve. And, just know that we're with you.
All right. Well, thank you. And we do know that you're with us, so greatly appreciate it. And thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Have a great one.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you.